of youth sports. Another place that, has a lot of good tips, and we'll have interviews with coaches or athletes, and that it just, really say a lot. And so to be able to, find those, that's, I think, very much a positive for me. And I really feel I've gotten, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, this is all really an education process for me as well. I mean, I think I have a certain knowledge now of this area, having looked at, a few thousand stories over the last 6 years. But it's still education. Like you said, learning about what these athletes are doing, off the field, like LeBron starting, a school, is, people may not be thinking of that because of, his day job, which he's obviously quite incredible at. But these guys have said it. I didn't see it last night, but Kobe Bryant, I believe it was Kobe Bryant, in the last month or two said, if I'm only known for playing basketball, I failed in my life. And, I think that really says a lot. Someone, in that stature with that type of professional success to say that, hey, I'm bigger than, sport is, I love sport, and, sport is fantastic. But, to hear someone like that say, I've got a lot more in me, and things to do positively, I think is great. And I think these guys, I think LeBron is the same way. He's talked about, his greatest legacy is not going to be in basketball. It's going to be in these other things. It's going to be in education, for example. So I think those types of, when those folks are saying it, and I think more and more are saying it of these athletes, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely, and the value of sports. Again, we talked about the social entrepreneurship. Where's the value in playing it? And it is the experience. You want kids to be student athletes, no matter what the sport is.
Right.
Because, and again, I've had other guests who will talk from the science side. It's a fact that the worst scenario for your brain is in an exam setting. I mean, you're tense, you're not moving,
right.
and then recess and all those things are what get your brain pumped up again and ready to learn. And then we get into the character building, and that's, unfortunately, it's more cliche, I think, than we'd like it to be, but that is the best part about this. I want to ask a little bit about your main company. So, because again, Sports Doing It is a blog that's on your website.
Right.
But, your consulting group, and you've got 4 words that describe what you do, but one of them is empathy. The way you consult other groups, and we'll let you give people the 30-second rundown on what your firm does. But I do want to come back to why you chose empathy as an important quality of your company. But give us the rundown on what the main company is doing. Okay.
Sure. And you know what? I mean, I can tell you that, this was something that I was doing when I moved from working in market research and when I was teaching part-time. So it's called the Core Group, and it really was just a sort of a continuation of what I was doing with respect to business strategy, and then adding in that sort of element of market research as well. When I worked for a market research firm, becoming even that much more aware of the importance of it in whether it's a business plan or whatever it may be. I haven't done, and if I have done it, it's been more informal. I really actually don't do much consulting anymore. I think between the newsletter and my own writing, that's really been sort of what has taken up my non-teaching time. So full time, again, I'm a professor of sport management, but the efforts that I've had in sort of working with organizations or kind of advising them, I've really have done as sort of an sort of outreach from the newsletter and the blog. Okay. So I would, I haven't ruled it out. I always had this idea when I was like, once I, get settled in, teaching full time, I'll get into that consulting, routine, and because that's a lot of professors do that, and it's good to keep them sharp, and also the money's oftentimes better doing that. I really just got really into the blog and the newsletter, and I felt that this is where I want to spend my time. I am not without thoughts about could I monetize this in some way, whether it's advertising or sponsorship with the newsletter or consulting. I've just been someone who's really benefited from doing it. I feel I'm a lot sharper in my day job because of doing the newsletter and meeting these great people who work in this broad field is really benefited me, and it's benefited my students, and that's who I really I care about on a day-to-day basis. So being able to do that's really where I've put my focus. So it's not that I won't do, and I've worked with organizations on sort of advising them about some of the things that I've seen in the sport for good area, but I don't really create projects out of it. It's just more like if I can help out, I'll be happy to do that. The same way, I've been assisted in some of the efforts that I've had, in developing the newsletter, for example.
Right. So what you're telling me is you got somebody who lives in New York who's got a degree from Georgetown in finance,
right.
MBA and a JD from Emory, and talks about being an entrepreneur, and you'd rather do the blog for free because there's the value.
Yeah, I think right. There's value, and it's something that I think the blog and newsletter in a way is an entrepreneurial effort.
It is,
and I do have a developing side business, and hopefully that's where the commercial success will come. It's an apparel brand, so maybe one day I can talk to you about that. But it really. I looked at it. I really wanted to make a mark with respect to teaching because I like being an adjunct, but doing it full time, teaching that many classes, I was like, I really want to be, and I thought I was in position to do it, but it was like it's still an ongoing, I think, development, professional development certainly, with respect to what I was doing in the classroom. So I think about it as well, like hey, could I be doing something generating, sort of more income. So I look at this as a sort of a long-term play here. But I think what I do get out of it, and, it's like therapeutic. I mean, just imagine if you spent, 10, 12 hours a week looking for good stories.
Oh, yeah.
You feel good. You feel, for the most part, I feel good. And there's positivity there, and I love forwarding stuff to people, or having people forward me things like that. And I think of that when you mentioned before, like constituents and stakeholders, my friends, my nieces, people I've worked with, someone like a Johan Olof Koss, where I can in a tiny way support someone like him and what he's doing, and the other organizations that are out there, and I have met a lot of great people, and I've met, and also just in doing this phone interview with you is, we've met.
Right.
So I think it's, I'm very grateful that, I've these other things that have kind of led me to this point, have in fact, been there. And so I would hope to, and my goal for it, and I do think about it is, how can my goal in terms of growing the newsletter is it's first and foremost that more people will see good stuff. And then whatever they do, if they're driven to donate or driven to volunteer, then that's success to me. Whether I learn about it or not, if they just do it on their own, I think that's great. So, that's the kind of, so hopefully sort of legacy that, is there.
Right. And you mentioned that what you do helps you with the day job. And that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing here. And yes, I'm in a similar, I've got a side consulting business that I hope to turn into, something grander. But in my real day consulting job, this type of activity really does help me to relate to people better. It helps me to see better things, because we're consultants and we have a team. We solve problems, and they're in the public setting. So it's fulfilling and it's frustrating. So you really need to come in with the right energy and the right approach, especially when you have people ranging from 25 to 65 years old, experts to as newbie as it gets. And this is what sports and reading about good things, and again, it is who you know. And that's why, again, I'm glad you mentioned that, you do these things, because you mentioned about meeting Johan from Right to Play. And I do want to come back to talk about them, because that's an interesting group that I know a little bit about. But that's why we go to meet people and talk. It's not so much to inflict their opinion.
Right.
It's to draw it out and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to carry that around for a while. And you'd be surprised how many people then will help you later on with an opinion you have.
Absolutely, yeah.
But let's talk about Right. I'm sorry. Can we talk about Right to Play? Because you mentioned them a few times, and it's a great organization. It's international,
right?
And I don't think a lot of people know what it is. Can you, I guess, be a little spokesperson for them right now?
Sure, a little bit. I think I'm on Facebook with him. Haven't connected with Johan in a long time, but I think it's a great organization. I know he started after he won several medals in, I think it was Lillehammer, Sarajevo or Lillehammer. And he got sort of bonus, and he donated it to Olympic Aid, which is to provide sort of play opportunities for kids. And he just really saw that there was a tremendous need for that, and then sort of out of that grew Right to Play. So it wasn't only Olympic related; it was bigger things as well. And so when I read about that, I said, "Boy, that's great." I mean, he's someone who has such accomplishment, but he's also taking something and going in an area that's really not maybe familiar, and that in terms of geography. I mean, this is a guy from Norway who's doing things in Africa, and having nothing to do with what he's known for, which is speed skating, and doing things that are other sport. And so I think he brought a lot of attention to, through Right to Play. I think Right to Play, when I was talking to him more about it, I mean, they were in the toughest spots. They're in refugee camps and war, areas. And because that's, a lot of times the hardest to keep the idea of play even alive. Unfortunately, you see, in refugee camps, hundreds of thousands of people. And, it's really kind of the stability of life that's been taken away, or they've unfortunately lost it. And kids are very vulnerable, at that point. And so, reading about organizations like him and then some other organizations, like, boy, that really is impressive to me. I really think it's great. And so being able to sit down with him and talk about and some of the things that this was in 2003, and then being able to learn, again, as I read about him, what he was doing, kind of did some more research and was able to find other groups that were doing it, that were sport related and not sport related. So I think it's great. I mean, it's based in Toronto, and they're doing stuff around the world. And I think they've been a sort of a leader in the space, but I think a lot of organizations have learned from them. I think the athlete ambassador model is something that they've done really well with, and others have been doing that as well. Laureus is a good example of that.
Yeah, it's they have everyone do look them up. It's real simple. It's just Right to Play, and it's just what Sab's been talking about. They go into communities around the world where things are not good, and that is when you need to play. It's not frivolous. It really is connecting people back with humanity. To really bring them back to life. And start.
And one of the things that I love Right to Play, because of the sport element of it, getting more kids to play, but also, again, taking it even further beyond. One of the things that attracted me to what they were doing is they are also educating a lot, with mostly kids, but educating kids about HIV, sort of gender equity, conflict resolution, So using sport for sport, but then using sport to, educate more. And, I think